I am pleased to be the master of ceremony of this afternoon session. My name is Jacques Denavo. I am in charge of Communication Smart. Communication Smart is a communication PR agency, press relation, etc. So I would like, before starting this session, I would like to pay a quick tribute to a space friend, a buddy, who was present at the first row of each space forum. We think and salute our friend Yves Feltes. This afternoon, our main topic is space revival, strengthen the high-tech ecosystem in Europe. So that means how to support the development of European space newcomers and startups. As you know, the new space movement has been going on for several years in Europe. We must create harmony in that. So to introduce this session, we have the chance to count on Marc, CEO of Luxembourg Space Agency, for a presentation entitled to the case of Luxembourg, EU Encore National Space Policy. Marc, the audience is yours.
Thank you very much, Jacques, for this introduction, and thank you to the organizers to have invited me. Let me maybe tell you today what we do in Luxembourg in space, but from a different angle. And I wanted here to emphasize it a little bit from the angle of the cooperation, and specifically in Europe. As the title shows, we are strongly anchored within the EU and Europe, and that does not hamper us to have a national policy. And I would even say that this is a big advantage for us to develop what we want to do here in Luxembourg. So for those who maybe know a bit less Luxembourg, well, we have here the responsibility of the space policies with the Ministry of the Economy. And the Luxembourg Space Agency is, of course, now the operational arm of the ministry to implement this policy. And policy is driven, because we are attached to the Ministry of the Economy, by the economy. And this is a spirit that we have since already the 80s. In the beginning of the 80s, the government stimulated the creation of a satellite operator that probably you know, SES. And this was already with the objective to create an economic ecosystem in Luxembourg. And if you go back in history, in fact, we started these activities in the 80s, and we became a member state of the European Space Agency only 20 years after. And that was a very good step and helped a lot to develop the ecosystem here in Luxembourg. So the missions of the agency are, first of all, contribute or help the companies to contribute to the economic growth here in Luxembourg. And economic growth, in fact, if you look at that, and in fact, what we do, of course, we as agency will not produce the value for the economy. It's, in fact, you here around the companies that do that. And what we have tried to do is really to adapt our policy to the needs of the companies. And so developing the ecosystem means that you, of course, have to help the companies find the right funding. And we have been active traditionally, essentially on the innovation and research and development side. So this is something we know a lot. And if I look at that from the cooperation and European angle, this is something we are doing essentially with the European Space Agency. And there, you see, we don't do it alone. We have a fantastic organization in Europe that supports countries and the companies to develop their activities. We have also a national program, and there as well, we are not doing that on a purely individual basis. Our national program, we do it also with the help of the European Space Agency. So that's one of the elements, innovation. And then, of course, when you are talking to startups, and this is the case now more and more with this commercialization of space, these companies cannot just develop themselves with a support in developing their product or their new services. They need also investment. And this is something we have started also in the last years to investigate and to push a lot, with the stimulation as well, the creation of a fund, a specialized fund in Luxembourg. And there as well, we have not done that alone. And the best sign is that this type of investment instrument today is supported also by European Investment Fund, for example. And there as well, we have had in the past an agreement with the European Investment Bank to see how they can use better their instruments to support the development of the space companies. And from that perspective, I must say that we are very happy as well that today the European Union has set up this Cassini program. I think this is definitely something that will support really strongly the development of commercial endeavor in the future. So near to that, companies need also talents. I think this is, in the meantime, something that is crucial, especially when you are in this building up phase. You really need the right resources, the right skills at the right moment, and with enough quantities, if I can say. And this is also something where we had to do some work in Luxembourg. I think Luxembourg has always been attractive enough to find resources around, and even sometimes far away. But that's not enough anymore. And so we have invested a lot of time in now going to the future talents. So, and again, if I take it from the angle of cooperation, we joined an initiative of the European Space Agency called European Space Education Resource Office, where the objective is to give the right instruments to the teachers to use space as a catalyzer to teach other types of disciplines. So you can use it in a mathematical course, in physics course, and others. You can do small workshops with the kids. And the big advantage of space is that this is so inspiring that we hope that also these young people, the generation that will, look for a job in your companies in 25 years, will be inspired enough to go in technical and scientific careers. So that's for the, let's say, the very young people. We also addressed the higher education part, and there we have set up an interdisciplinary space master together with the university, with the aim, again, to have graduates at the end in Luxembourg that have, let's say, grown up already here locally, and that will be available as a pool of resources for the development of our ecosystem here in Luxembourg. And there as well, this is a program where there is a cooperation. So the university is cooperating, for example, with the International Space University in Strasbourg. Some professors are also part of this program. And by the way, or in the meantime, the university has also integrated a European program called Universe, with the vision to develop a European university in the space domain. And so they are joined with French universities, Swedish, and others. I can't remember now the details, but this is an extremely interesting initiative where, again, we have stimulated a program here in Luxembourg, integrated other partners, and now you see it takes really a European dimension. Research as well is a thematic that we have addressed. We have already in Luxembourg a number of research institutions, but we have done something specific, and that's particularly dedicated on our initiative on space resources. Near to this more down to earth, if I can say, policy of trying to develop our economy here in Luxembourg, we also have started in 2016 a more visionary initiative where the objective is to promote the sustainable utilization of space resources. And that means that you use the volatiles that you can find in space, on the moon, on asteroids, on Mars, and maybe other bodies, and you do something with it. Just to give you a very concrete example, in one of the studies that we have done, we have identified as one potential first application the use of water from the moon to produce propellant. And that could be one of, let's say, relatively close in time application that can come out of the use of space resources. But it's not the only one. I think if you think about using regolith on the moon as a construction material, I mean, there are plenty. Once you look into this topic, people in the beginning in 2016 were looking at us with those eyes saying, now Luxembourg is completely lost, they're crazy, these guys. And at the end, when you really go into the topic, you can understand what the opportunity is. Of course, it's long term. We cannot do it today. We will need some more work to achieve that. And this is the reason why we have also invested in specific research in the domain of space resources. And there we have, I think, a fantastic example of cooperation. We have created in Luxembourg the European Space Resources Innovation Center. And the cooperation is really multidimensional in the sense that first, we as an agency, we have cooperated with a research institute to create it. We have brought on board as a strategic partner the European Space Agency. So this gives then the European dimension to the center. And we are opening up the cooperation with partnerships, with other research institutes, with other agencies, but also with industry. And here, very good example as well, we have signed recently, maybe you have seen that in the press as well, a cooperation between the Luxembourg Space Agency, the Research Center ESRIC, CNES, the French Space Agency, and Air Liquide. And that's fantastic. There we can start really seeing also the engagement of, I would say, really big players from industry in a thematic like space resources. So this gives you now a little bit the variety of activities that we have at the Space Agency and how we look at this need of the ecosystem as a whole to develop and to create value for the economy here in Luxembourg. So we have a national policy, and even though it's national, I think it's really built up on what we see as a big advantage for us, a strong cooperation spirit at European level, but not only. Those who are following us can see as well that we are engaged also on I would say outside Europe. We have a few agreements with other countries around the world as well to develop this vision, especially on the topic of space resources. And the instruments we are using, again, as I mentioned here, are really anchored here in Europe again with European organizations. I mentioned ESA, I mentioned the European Union and their organizations, etc. So all this combined gives us the right ingredients, I think, to develop further our ecosystem. We are still reflecting on new initiatives that hopefully will still be communicated this year. But again, I think it's important here that when you address the question or the instruments that you need to implement a policy, that you don't look only on yourself, and that you do that also looking at what environment is around you. So I hope that in 5 to 10 years, we will see the results of all the investments we have done today, because of course it takes time to come to the real results. But the last trends are extremely positive. So I would say that we are confident today that all these measures have already brought some success here in Luxembourg. And of course, I'm ready to go a little bit more in details with some of you if this would be required. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marc. Thank you, Marc, for your presentation, and thank you for your support to the Space Forum. The work of the institution is fundamental. ESA, European Commission, are conductors of the harmony to be created between the space newcomers and the traditional industry. Our next speakers will be discussing how to support the development of European newcomers and startups. Please welcome on stage Geraldine Naja. Merci, Geraldine. Geraldine is Acting Director of Commercialization, Industry and Procurement at the European Space Agency. And we will connect right now, if it's possible, to Mr. Christoph Kautz. Christoph, can you hear us?
I can hear you very well.
Very good. So you are head of unit for secure connectivity, space surveillance and application in DG Defense, Industry and Space at the European Commission. Am I right?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
So we are happy to hear you. Geraldine is ready for starting the topic. The floor is yours.
Well, first, hello to everyone. Hello, Christoph. It's been a long time.
Hello.
We have worked together some years ago, but I think we will work again together soon. The subject, I think, is very timely, shall I say, for ESA and for the Commission. We have heard already of the Chini initiative, and I'm sure, Christoph, you will tell us more about this. And on the ESA side, as you know, our new Director General, Josef Aschbacher, has outlined his vision for the European space sector in his Agenda 2025. And he has many priorities, the first one being a good and healthy relationship with the Commission, but the second one being commercialization. And commercialization of space is certainly high on his agenda, together, I would say, with the transformation of ESA and what it entails, because I think it is clear that the space sector of 2021 does not look at all like the space sector of 2000 or even of 2010. We are confronted with many challenges and we have to respond to them. I know that the European Commission is already reflecting and starting to respond to them, and we have to also do it, I would say, together with the Commission, of course, but to set the conditions. So I think, Jacques, you asked me, how can ESA respond to this challenge? What do we plan to do? What we plan to do is really to act on three main lines. The first one, which was mentioned just a few minutes ago by Marc, is talent, innovation, investing in brains. And that is, of course, something we already do at ESA, because all the space projects that we manage are about innovation and knowledge and brains. But even more than that, make sure that we can be faster in transforming innovation into perhaps commercial products. So this is the first thing: innovate and invest in talents. The second thing is access to funding, because you need brains, but you also need capital. We already work on incubation. You know, we have our network of business incubation centers, but we need to go the next step. So beyond the seed funding, beyond the first few million euros, we have to support those startups which are competitive, which are successful, which are promising, and go to scale up. And this is something we have to do in Europe. Sometimes the investors are a bit shy, are a bit risk adverse. We need to help them. So to do that, we need to set up partnerships with the investors. We already reflect on a partnership with the European Investment Fund. And I think ESA has a lot to bring in terms of advisory, of technical assessment of the projects concerned. And then the first line of action is speed, I would say. Speed in general, be faster in, for instance, having demonstration and validation of products. It can be through IOD, IOV opportunities, and the Commission is of course doing that, and we want to support this. But it is also speed in being faster to place contracts, to make payments, to interact with the startups. Because what really differentiates new space from the traditional space is the speed, time to market, and as I say, on our side, we have to work on time to payment, time to contract. And also processes which are more adapted to this new type of entities. So these are the 3 lines on which we're working. I could go forever on it, but I think I need to be fast as well. So I'll stop here for the time being. Thank you, Jacques.
So Christoph, do you want to add anything about that topic? Please.
Yes, thank you very much. So I think what I will say is largely very complementary with Geraldine, and I'm very happy to be with Geraldine, even if virtually on stage. So first of all, I mean, what we are seeing is, I think, 3 trends, and then I'll tell you how we want to react to these 3 trends. So first is we are seeing new products and services developing. So space technology is becoming more affordable. We see new functionalities emerging, and we see that there is more and more fusion of digital services with space data, information, and services. So in particular, driven by new space, we see new products and services coming up. And then we see at the same time also new business models developing. In essence, it's about commercialization of space. I mean, launch costs are going down. We see investors like Elon Musk building up multi-constellations. So clearly there are new business models developing. And we see also new financing schemes developing with that, in the sense that we see an increasing role of venture capital funds that are becoming very, very active. And if you look at these 3 trends, how do we want this, as I'm talking now as Commission, pick up on this, and what are we going to do about this? And I understand that there has already been some talk about our Cassini Entrepreneurship Initiative. And here, if I take these 3 elements again, so new products and services, what we think is we should clearly help startups, newcomers in jumping on this and being able themselves to develop new products and services based on space data, space technologies. And there we have in mind, of course, to stimulate new products and services through prices. For example, in Horizon Europe, we have just announced in the work program 2 prices. We have also the European Agency for the Management of Space Programs, EUSPA, in Prague, who has announced a whole prize pool. We are also working on hackathons to stimulate new ideas. And also we are working on further enlarging what we have been doing so far on in-orbit demonstration and validation. So providing the possibility for startups to really test their products also in space. And then if I come to the second part, which is the new business models, and I think here, indeed, there's a nice complementarity also with ESA. We want to support really startups by giving them access to business incubators. So I'm not talking about here technology incubation, but really business incubation. And this is something we want to launch later this year. And also in terms of new business models for ourselves, we want to perhaps profit from it. And we are looking into the possibility of acting eventually as anchor customer. This could be, for example, the case in the case of data buy schemes. And then on the new financing schemes, you have heard probably about it. Commissioner Breton has announced that we are going to set up a seed and growth fund with a target investment value of €1 billion. And here we are working together with the European Investment Fund. And here again, I see a very nice complementarity with ESA, because as Geraldine has said, ESA could act indeed as the one who can check the technologies in which venture capital funds want to invest, and I think here there are really good possibilities to work together with ESA. And then let's say in between new business models and new financing schemes, we see also the need to improve the matchmaking between new companies, startups, and the business world, investors in particular.
But can you explain a little bit more between, you talk about a new business model, new business incubation. Maybe you can explain which kind of organization will you organize or reorganize?
So in fact, our idea is not to invent something new, but rather to provide the possibility for startups and newcomers to have access to top-notch business incubators, which exist in many member states. They exist. It's really to make companies or startups, if you want, fit for investors. This is the idea behind it. And of course, I mean, you know how the Commission works. Of course, we are subject to public procurement rules. So also for finding the business incubator or business incubators that would do this work, this will be done through a public procurement, or procurement of a service, rather.
Okay, thank you. Geraldine, do you want to add something? I have one question, but I'm sure maybe in the room you have one question to ask to our speakers.
Well, maybe what I can add is just emphasize, I think, what Christoph has said, is that public institutions and organizations and entities like, of course, the European Commission and ESA have a role to play also, because as many startups tell us, and said so even this morning with the creation of the Yes initiative. Yes initiative. What those companies need is fair access to the possibility to gain contracts from our institutions. And of course, when I say fair access, it means that you cannot have the same level of requirements, of specifications for an Airbus or a TAS, which are excellent companies, of course, but which are well established, which have extensive background, extensive competences, and a startup which is a couple of years old. So if you want to give them the possibility to compete, you have to adapt the way you procure and you place contracts. And I think in Europe, it is clear that the subsidies are there. We have the seed funding, we have the possibility to give grants, we have this type of environment exists. What is really needed is then for those companies to grow is to have some anchor customership, be it from the Commission or from ESA, or to be entering into the supply chain of the large primes. So I think this is something on which we have to work.
Do we need more funding, Christoph?
Always, no.
Always, more and more? Or?
Always within the limits of the available public budget. No? But just to say that, of course, funding plays an important role, but I mean, it's also clear that the available funding is not endless. So we have to do the best what we can with the money we have. And there I join fully with what Geraldine said, which I fully subscribe to, is that newcomers, startups, what they want is real contracts. And this is, I think, something where we have to work on. I think we can do more and we can do better. I mean, the term was now used, anchor customer, and I think this is really something we have to work on and to see how to operationalize something like that. From the outset, it sounds easy, but when you look into the details, I mean, there's quite some work behind in order to be able to do something like that.
So that means we need to create more harmony between new space newcomers and the traditional industry, and how to organize a good harmony between these actors.
But I think you should not oppose them. They are complementary, in fact, because, and by the way, you see it also that the innovation, the production techniques, methods, the way to do things is also an inspiration to the established partners. I mean, you see that when Airbus started building its OneWeb satellites, the way it has let's say, developed and manufactured the satellites is completely different. It was impressive to see the production line. So I think there is complementarity. Now, of course, once again, if you want to have, let's say, those new entities, the startups, the newcomer SMEs work with us, the big institutions, it's up to us to evolve and adapt. That is clear. And by the way, that's what I said to you earlier. I think the creation of a syndicate, if I can say, for space SMEs is really a good thing, because for us entities, big public entities, it gives us an interlocutor with whom to exchange, and it gives those European startups more weight, more visibility, and it gives them a voice to pass their message. So, I mean, we are in the middle of doing that at ESA. I'm sure the Commission is working on that as well. How best can we work with these entities? And once again, not so much because they are this or that, because they bring innovation, competitiveness, they bring a new approach and a new way of doing things. This is really essential.
Absolutely. Thank you, Geraldine. David Henry has one question for us.
Yeah, I have a question for Christoph. So I've heard a lot of initiatives coming from the Commission. And I will let's say reinforce the message that Geraldine gave. I heard hackathon, investment funds, prizes, business incubators, but I did not hear contracts. And I think that, as you said, it's, I always try to think with a constant number of euros, because it's easy to add euros to give contracts. But it's really the question: if you have €1, what is the best that I can do? And I think that with €1 of contract, you have a leverage effect on the financial world that will have much more results than €1 invested in a hackathon or a grant or a subsidy. And when you track the history of all successful new space US companies, so obviously SpaceX, but also, I don't know, Planet, Rocket Lab, Firefly, all the US new space companies you can think of, you always have a multi-year institutional contract at the beginning. And so if we want to create these actors, we'll have to have fair access to contracts, and that's why we launched the initiative this morning. And so that was one comment. So and again, we exist because we got help from the institutions, and I'm not removing that, of course. But so the question is quite simple. I think actually a great initiative from the Commission had been to have startups bidding for the call to design the constellation for the Secure Connectivity Initiative. But the question is, do you think that after this study, it would be something possible, doable by the Commission, to have for one or several primes of that constellation a company that is younger than 10 years old? Or do you think that it's not possible today?
Thanks a lot. And in fact, yes, I didn't say contract, but I said anchor customer, so which in essence is about a contract. But you are right. I mean, your question is of course fully correct, and what you want, and that is fully shared. That of course startups should also have the possibility. And real possibility to get in the end a contract, and as you rightly said, we have launched now a further tender specifically asking for startups and SMEs to help us in defining what could be this future secure connectivity constellation. And of course, at least the political idea behind it is that we don't stop there, that when it comes to then procuring the constellation, that there is also participation of startups, SMEs, newcomers. This is the political idea behind it, of course.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that initiative was great to launch that call for the study. And for startups, I think has actually even more sense than the Cassini Fund, for instance, because it shows that the Commission wants really to work on actual operational thing. And that was really the good thing of the summer, and we really support that and hope that it will continue that way.
Thank you, David. We have 20 seconds for one question, if you want. It's possible for one question to ask something. No, nothing. So it was a complicated topic, not easy a difficult question and a good answer, Christoph. So thank you very much. Thank you, Geraldine. And on peut vous applaudir.
Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now let's continue with Geoffroy Legros, Sales Director of Arianespace. So Arianespace is not a newcomer, but this European company created in 1980 must find the harmony to continue its path with many newcomers, even in Europe. So Arianespace provides 3 launcher solutions, Ariane, Soyuz, and Vega, for all types of satellites, so you know that. So please give a warm welcome to Geoffroy.
All right. So hi everyone, and it's good to see real people after 1.5 years of Zoom meetings and virtual conferences, etc., etc. So it's a pleasure to see that things are going in a good way. It's not normal already, but we're going in the right direction. All right, so let's talk about a little bit of rocketry now. So as introduced, I'm Geoffroy Legros, Geoffroy for non-French speaking people. And so let's jump in the subject. So I will not give you too much corporate details, but just to give you some highlights about Arianespace. So as you know, Arianespace is the company for decades now, providing launch services to various type of customers. So just to give you high-level figures, so we did like €1 billion of turnover for 2020, and we have still in backlog €3.6 billion expected of revenue. Of course, our main launch pad is based in South America, in French Guiana, in Kourou, where we operate the launchers mentioned by Jack before, and we'll come back on that. And we have also partnership ongoing with our friends in Russia and Kazakhstan to use Baikonur and Vostochny launch pads through StarSem, and we can talk about that a little bit later. So as mentioned before, so at the moment, I said the moment because there's new things coming, but today we use those 3 launchers. So our good old lady Ariane 5, first launches in 96, Today, Ariane 5 operates mainly for telecommunication satellites. Usually we send two big telecom satellites on board. The next one is Soyuz, and we operate Soyuz from Kourou. It's not well known, but we have a launch pad dedicated to Soyuz in Kourou. And I mean, the added value from Kourou is that it creates +1 tons of performance compared to what we can have, for example, in Kazakhstan. So it gives more power if you want to send, for example, small geo satellites, this kind of mission. And so today we have done 59 launches. We have a launch scheduled tonight for OneWeb. It will be from Kazakhstan. So it will be our 16th. And this mission will conduct to the 1,000th satellites sent by Arianespace in space. And the third one is Vega, so our light version. And this is mainly to send and to address SSO and LEO missions, such as Earth observation, and also to address the small sat and nano satellite markets that we're going to talk about. So some fresh news. Of course, COVID has changed a lot of the organized plan, but intense activities during this summer. So with the launch of Ariane 5, one Vega, one Soyuz. As I said before, another launch tonight for Soyuz from Kazakhstan. For the coming years, we still expect to have another 7 launches. Of course, it depends on the availability of satellites, but this is what we have in mind. And important missions to mention. So we will have SES-17 for Luxembourg/SES later in October. And one very big important mission will be the launch of James Webb Space Telescope. This morning we were talking about partnership between several entities. So that's a good example of partnership between NASA and ESA for this very important mission for everyone, and especially for us, considering the cost and the time to develop such an important satellite. Okay, now, so let's talk about the market. It was interesting today for us and how the link is made with startups. So I entered myself in the business in 2017, and in 2017, it's not a long time ago, but there were companies presenting some kind of, I would say, pitch or ideas, and it looks like a little bit a dream, but today it becomes reality. And today we have a lot of new things coming. In the past, I mean, the industry was driven mainly by big geo satellites. It was the same for Europe, for US, etc. Now we have plenty of other markets to address. I will not go into too much detail now, but just to say that it comes from very big satellites, communication satellites above 7 tons. We have geo-servicing, so we have launched last year a module able to extend the duration of the life of the satellites that are still existing and that are still in orbit in geo, and it gives extra life duration for the satellites, and it helps operators not to spend money in the capex for several years. At the opposite, we have small geo satellites like 400 kilograms, and the idea is not to spend too much money in the propulsion because they are light, so the idea is to send them directly to geo and to find a trend, a commercial trend to launch this kind of satellites. MEO, of course, with Galileo or 3B that we did with Soyuz from our Soyuz launch pad in French Guiana, for example. New breakthrough technology with what we call SDS, stackable software-defined satellites. So the idea clearly was to decrease the price of launches by putting together 2 satellites instead of 1. And this thing is coming, and there's a huge success for those satellites coming from operators. And this is clearly something that we're going to have more and more in the coming years. So really important for launch satellites not to miss this important step. And of course, Leo, Nano, microsatellites. So we talk about a lot of those projects those days in the press. So today, the volume for such satellites are not important, but this is something we address. We cannot miss that, and we will talk about it later. At the opposite, we have what we call mega Leo Constellations, companies that are in the process of sending hundreds and sometimes thousands of satellites in space. Of course, the observation satellites, and more recently, we discussed with customers to send them to the moon, and it's related to the person from the NASA we had this morning, explaining that there's new things coming with Artemis program, and behind that, there's commercial entities working on moon and trying to go for space resources, as explained just before. So Arianespace is in this field as well. And on top of that, more and more space agencies on the business. The figure I have is 66, but it's maybe above that now. but they are fully of ambition, fully of dreams, arrive with a lot of different ideas. So for us, it's really a challenge to address this kind of needs. So it's quite a very, very interesting time to work in such an industry today. So to address those needs, we couldn't stand on Ariane 5, Soyuz, and Vega alone. So several years ago, Europe together decided to launch the new programs, well known as Ariane 6, and the new version of Vega, more powerful version, Vega C. And those rockets will help us to address the market we've just announced before. We couldn't make it with Ariane 5, and of course, we have a lot of pressure on prices. We all know that SpaceX is there, but not only SpaceX, and Europe had to find a way to reduce the prices, and Ariane 6 is the first step to this price reduction in Europe. So just to notice that those first launches for Ariane 6 and Vega C are expected next year. It's a very important step. And if you can put the video at the corner on the right, just to say that all the industry has been organized to reduce as much as possible the cost. So for example, here we have one example, is to reuse the same booster for the first stage of Vega C and the booster that's going to be used in both versions, light version with 2 boosters, Ariane 62, and 4 boosters with Ariane 64. So here is an update of what we have in terms of preparation for Ariane 6. So this is the main step that we had since the past year. So here we have finalized the test for all the engines that we will have on Ariane 6. This is a view of the launch pad that we're going to use for Ariane 6 in French Guiana. So you have what we have at the top and at the bottom with the networks of liquid, hydrogen and oxygen. Intense work. It's unbelievable to see the work done the past months. The building in which we're going to assemble Ariane 6, it will be done horizontally. This is the place where we're going to put together the first and the second stage. Then we drop that to the launch pad, to the mobile gantry. So here's a mock-up of the future Ariane 6 that will be used for combined operation, where we put the boosters together around the central core. So this big engine is Vulcan is also as well tested and ready to go for the first flight. So this is the last test conducted last year. After that, for the upper stage, that's so the final test will be conducted in Germany to test the upper stage level with the Vinci engine, which is going to give us a very important added value on the market we talked about before, because this is this engine that will help us to deliver the different orbits that we need to reach, which was impossible to do with Ariane 5 in the version that we use today. So that's for the, I would say, the upper parts of the evolution, and I'm going to, if you can run the video as well on the right side. So this is just to give you the last months we've just tested the what we call the deluge. It's the phase during which we put a lot of water on the launch pad, trying to decrease the level of vibration and sound to protect the payload under the fairing. So that was done successfully. Regarding Vega C, so important step as well, because it will allow us to bring more capacity to the customers, and especially with our and I don't like this word startups, but let's say small companies trying to put new ideas, small satellites in orbit. And to do that, of course, we needed to have a lot of flexibility, and this flexibility is acquired thanks to the structure we have developed. I won't go in too much details at this stage, but you see that there's plenty of new structure that we have developed that will be able to give some kind of possibility with both Vega C and Ariane 6, from few kilograms nano satellites to up to 250 kilograms, used as auxiliary payloads of a main passenger. And clearly, we talked a little bit this morning with a lady on the panel, but clearly for customers, they have to make a choice between, I would say, a bus strategy versus a taxi strategy. So there's both added value. It's a trend that has to be made by customers. We will not clearly address the same markets. I mean, we aggregate together satellites, so we have to find a compromise between all customers. Of course, if you use a small rocket, you can do it in another way. But we are requested a lot, by customers trying to, of course, to decrease prices. But not only that, the other important step not to miss is the time that you have between the moment you have a phone call from a prospect till the moment you launch. Because clearly the startups, sometimes they are late in the process of building the satellites. Like for big satellites, it's not only a question of production, but it's also a question of context. COVID, I don't know. So they are costing a lot to reduce this time frame between the moment we sign the contract and to the moment we launch. This is clearly something that we have to chase on our side to reduce this time between a contract and launch. Regarding microsats and new needs, so we have made some important steps with Vega. For example, you have here on the screen some images that we have during what we call SSMS mission. So we sent 53 satellites for 21 customers last year in orbit. But because of COVID, we had to find a way to stop the operation because customers couldn't make it to Kourou. So we used, we can call that some kind of smart glasses, so that customers could follow the operation from their screen at home. So this is the kind of things that we had to put in place. And it's also reducing the cost for us and for the customers because it's avoid them to come to Kourou to spend money in travel expenses. So this is clearly something that's going to be more and more present in the future. And of course, so this is, as we said, Ariane 6 and Vega C is the first step, but there's more to come. There's a lot of innovation that are discussed today at the European level, together with our production Avio with Ariane Group, for example. So we have plenty of innovation coming there. We know that reusability is a lot discussed in the business those days. So we have put, and French government through CNES, and together with the European partners, has put some money to build the first project based on what we call Callisto Themis concept. And then we'll see, thanks to the Prometheus engine, if there's here a commercial trend to use reusability. So of course, it will allow to reduce costs, but we have to master the technical bricks to do that, and it's ongoing. So I will not go into too much details, but just to say that Arianespace is a lot in innovation those days, new program, new way to address new needs. Debris removal will be a very important step because we talk a lot about new possibilities. A lot of satellites in orbit, but together we have to think about how to think sustainability in this new world. And if you have sometimes, I'm saying that for companies that need to be launched, go on our website to use our new system that will give you the opportunity to book flights online. We have some discounts available, especially for the flights that are scheduled to be flown in the coming years. So go ahead, and if you have some question, I'm available in the room after that. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you very much, Geoffroy, for this enriching presentation and amazing slides. So, space is the best way to transport zettabytes of data from point A to point B without borders. Our next speaker will highlight LSA Data Center. Marco Chini, Senior Research and Technology Associate at LIST. Please join. What's happened? Marco, welcome on stage. You will talk and explain a synergy to facilitate the exploration of satellite EO, Earth observation, data for urban applications.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for inviting me. And yeah, I will talk about, I'm working at LIST, and I'm part of the remote sensing and natural resource modeling group. Our mission is to do research in remote sensing and natural resources with an impact on society and also on fields which are strategic for Luxembourg and that meet the international agenda. Our objective is to do the entire chain of the research from fundamental up to bring some impact result on the market. And today I will show you an example how we do this, at least in collaboration with other partners. The group I'm working in is working for main topics, which are natural disaster, natural resources, precision agriculture, and maritime surveillance. We are now in a new era for Earth observation, where there are a lot of satellite data from different initiatives at European level, national level, and also from the private sector. This is quite interesting for us, also from research, also as a researcher, because we have a lot of data with many different characteristics that we can combine and provide added value product. In this respect, the Copernicus program has been a big game changer because it is able to provide data at global scale in a continuous way and especially at systematic way. The data are acquired continuously with the same characteristic, and this is really an added value. And another point which is quite important is that these data are free of charge. And this with the objective to really push downstream services and also boost the market, EU market in this perspective. So where we can get this data, there are different access points. One of those is Copernicus Data Hub. That is an initiative from European Commission. Of course, these data are quite a lot and are quite heavy, so we need more than one access point to download and process this data. So there are also dioceses, which is also another European Commission initiatives, where also we have the possibility to process this data. And then there are also national initiatives, which are the collaborative ground segment, where are another pipe where to access this data. One of those is the Luxembourg Space Agency data center, which is the Luxembourg entry point for Copernicus data, in particular for Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2 data, which are data, radar and optical data. So the LSA data center, as I said, is the entry point for Luxembourg for Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2. And the mission is to really accelerate the development of downstream services and to provide added value services. And the user can access this data, download, and search for the best place where they need this kind of data. The most important thing is that all these data are directly accessible and available. There is no rolling policy as the other collaborative does, or also on dioceses. We have now like 6-7 months of availability of the data. Afterwards, they go in a rolling archive. So in this perspective, the LSA data center is quite unique as an access point for this kind of data. From our experience with end user for services that we develop in the field of natural disaster, in particular flood mapping, the needs of end user is to really access easily this data, to process them, and also avoid to download big amount of data and also to avoid to have and interact with the IT expert for processing them. So what they want is to have an easy way to get the product they need. So how to do this? Accessing, processing this data in an easy way, there are cloud computing infrastructure. And for example, the WASD platform, which is a list spin-off created on December 2020, which give the possibility to access this data, process, but also WASD is also a marketplace where experts can even deploy their software and run it. So it gives a lot of different opportunities. So to process the data, access, but also to deploy your software and sell it. And so here, how it is the platform. It's you can access via web services. You can show the images. You can run your process, select area of interest, and then get your product. For example, in this case, is the building map over this area that is in Japan that has been obtained processing Sentinel data. Here, as I mentioned before, we want to show what we are developing at LIST, which is a urban monitoring system that takes advantage of satellite data and give to an end user the resulting building map. On the market, there are no solution at the moment able to monitor city with a high level of granularity, neither a high level of which are not so capable to refresh easily the data. To reach to meet the end user needs, so to have high resolution data and really updated one, you need to combine different kind of satellite at different resolution and with different characteristics. And then the idea of Pigeon, which is a proof of concept to provide the urban sprawl using satellite data via an access to a cloud computing infrastructure. Here is the idea. So an end user will access an area of interest via a web interface. So he selected the area of interest, and what the end user will get back is the building map over this area at 10-meter resolution using images from Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2 missions. So the images available in this area are processed, and then here is the final building map at 10 meters. The end user needs just to have an access to the platform, select the area, the period of interest, and get the final map. In case an end user is interested to higher resolution data, so is able to purchase data from commercial satellite, he can do this. So he can buy higher resolution data, and then they will be processed in an automatic way, and then the final the building map at higher resolution will be provided. The idea here is that we use the low resolution building map that are always available because Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2 data are always available to train a deep learning artificial intelligence algorithm to classify higher resolution images. So in this way, using different data at different time, you can monitor the urban sprawl over the area of interest of the end user. So this is it's quite effective. So we we change the paradigm how to apply artificial intelligence to classify high-resolution images. Instead of to provide a lot of images to train the classifier, we use low-resolution labels from other missions. And here is the final scheme how this proof of concept should work. So we have we have customers that access the platform, and then they can get the low resolution at 10 meter product using data from LSA data center and from Copernicus mission. And in case they are interested to have higher resolution data, they can buy via the platform data from commercial satellite, like we were discussing with different companies like Spacey, Capella Space. These images are processed, and then the final map is provided to the end user. The platform could be even an access point to buy commercial satellite, and this was also discussion we had with several end users. It's really an important aspect because sometimes there is not a clear way, there is no a unique entrance point to buy data from different providers. So this is all. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. You can stay maybe because I have one question. We have time for questions if you wish. I have one question to you, if it's possible, because I was very impressed about the floods that took place in Germany and Belgium. So is your system was involved in that?
Not this one. We have another service.
Maybe you can explain a little bit.
Yeah, we have another service that is working in the same way, using the same platform to map flood, and then we provided several flood maps. Actually, we were activated by the disaster charter for Luxembourg, and we provided the flood map over this area. So we acted as a PM and value adders for this event. But the system, it works exactly in the same way. We have a booth for WASD, platform and list, where we can explain this. But the idea is that an end user has to just access the web, select the area of interest, and he will get the result in an automatic way.
Open to the public?
Yeah, yes or no, it depends. Yeah, you have to register, yes.
Thank you. This next roundtable will be very interesting, very, very interesting. Brilliant European newcomers will be on stage. So the topic will be Earth Observation 2.0, Threatening European Space Field with SmallSat. I am happy to invite Mr. Clément Gallic on stage. Clément Gallic is CEO of Unseen Lab. For the discussion, we will have also Shay Strong, VP of Analytics ISI, and Dan Isaac, Business Development Executive Spire. Welcome on stage, please have a seat. And you have also a connection with Juan Thomas Hernani, founder and CEO of Satlantis. So Juan, welcome back. I think you are speaking from Bilbao. Huh?
Here I am.
Okay, Clément, take the lead.
Does it work? Yeah. Thank you, Jacques, for the introduction. And first, I would like to thank my fellow partners to be there today to discuss in person, and Juan to be connected from Bilbao. So yes, today just we are going to talk about 4 companies who are working in the new space and particularly small sat domain, just to show that things are doable with limited credits, limited capex, and but wonderful results. We are going to quickly introduce the different companies in a few minutes, and then discuss of what we can bring to space domain in Europe and how it can change the game and bring some brand new capacity and brand new independence for Europe, for example. Okay, so it starts by Unseen Labs. So Unseen Labs is a radio frequency monitoring company created 5 years ago in France. I created it with my brother, my both brothers, so it's a family company. We are dedicated to intercept radio frequency signals emitted from Earth, from space. So basically we are deploying antennas in space. Today we are 4 active satellites in space, and the objective is to deploy 20 to 25 satellites in the next 2 years, let's say that. We are focusing on maritime surveillance domain, which is also a focus of Aspire and ISI, so I guess it's a common activity we have. Just to very quickly explain you, we are able to localize any kind of ships at sea to the kilometer with their passive emissions, radio frequency emissions. So basically, we are not working on beacons, but we are producing a brand new kind of data just to complete typically the beacons on boards and to be able to localize the dark ships and for applications in maritime security, maritime awareness domain, and typically we are working a lot for anti-piracy, anti-narcotraffics, or even illegal fisheries. Just a few pictures are always better than long words. Some example of what we are doing here in Pacific Ocean. On the left, you can see typically the Mozambique Canal, where you know it's an active place of trafficking and piracy. You have, in fact, in red, the position of the ships emitted by beacons, AES typically, and all the blue points are the Unseen Labs localization of ships. And typically our product, merged with AES data, directly show the people working on this area the localization of the non-cooperative position of ships, and give them the ability to act faster, quicker, and with less expenses. Another example here in the south of India, where you can see that we have huge fleets, unregulated fleets of fisheries. So we are just here to bring new kind of data for new application, and for now limited to maritime surveillance, but not only in the future. I give the Shay.
Hello, yes, I'm Dr. Shay Strong. I'm the Vice President of Analytics at ISI. There I lead a global multidisciplinary team who is trying to create critical solutions using SAR imagery from ISI's constellation. Next slide. So just a couple of statistics if you're not familiar with ISI. As of the beginning of this year, we have 14 satellites in our constellation. The company itself was the first to miniaturize SAR, synthetic aperture radar technology. And now 14 satellites. Data is great, but really the new, the future of space industry is really what you do with that data. We're now at like 350, so this is a little bit of an older slide, but 350 different people at the company, kind of global at this point in US, UK, Poland. We're actually working to create an ML Center of Excellence in Luxembourg as well. And then we also have had some significant financing, of course, enabling the constellation. And just pretty pictures, again, because they are better to look at than just hearing us talk. These are just some recent examples of some of the analysis. Unfortunately, they were beautiful animations, but it's a bit static here. On one side, you have the Fagradalsfjall volcano in Iceland, where we were able to capture with our spot resolution, which is 0.25 meter per pixel resolution at 5 by 5 square kilometers of the eruption that happened earlier this year. And in fact, you know, one of the beautiful things of SAR, with it being a persistent radar technology, where you are actually, you know, an active source, in this case, an X-band source, you're creating your own illumination with a very high frequency, and with the daily revisit, we can capture some really subtle geological features. So that was pretty cool. And then in the middle, we've also been monitoring the Muldrow Glacier in Alaska, which is a glacier that was reported to be 10 times faster than normal glaciers in terms of its movement. So again, a fairly dynamic thing to start evaluating. And then, of course, you know, kind of moving into man-made patterns of life. How do we identify significant change or anomalies? What does that look like? Of course, with SAR, being able to look through both darkness and through weather in terms of clouds and smoke and haze, we can monitor a lot of activity in ports and harbors and various other things. So I think that's it from me.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you. My name is Dan Isaac, and I'm Business Development Executive with Spire. Please, next slide. So Spire was created with the belief that we could use nanosatellite technology to deliver real impact to the world. And to that extent, now the company has grown from 3 founders in a garage back in 2012 to a company of about 350 people in terms of number of employees. It's now, just since only a few weeks ago, a public company floating on the New York Stock Exchange. And what we do is we basically, really collect all kinds of data from the vantage point of space, very similar to what Unseen Labs and ISI are doing today. We collect AIS data to track the movement of ships, with data very, very complementary to Unseen Labs and also ISI as well. We actually work together on several activities. And we also collect data about the movement of aircraft around the world through the ADS-B signals. And most importantly as well, now we have a new line of business to track, monitor the weather patterns of the Earth at large scale, because we know that climate change is happening and will get worse, but not better. Next slide. So we've since 2012 we've launched about 140 satellites. Currently 110 in operations, because some of them are obviously retired, which allows us to really to have a global constellation of sensors, more than just a constellation of satellites. It's really a global constellation of sensors that individually gather a small amount of data, but collectively gather a lot of information about what's happening on the Earth. And on top of that, we have about 30 ground stations distributed around the world, because we need to get that data down to the ground. We have global coverage, refreshness of data within 15 minutes, and collecting a ton of information, lots of messages, ADS-B, AIS, and what we call radio occultation, which is like samples of temperature, humidity, wind speed of the atmosphere. So this is a lot of data that we then package and commercialize to our customers. And next slide. In addition to that, we also offer, because we're able to manufacture at scale many satellites, we have the ability to also support other customers, especially those customers that want to deploy new technology, new sensors, new payload into space, and they want to run their business, but they don't want to kind of get bogged down in the actual development of a nanosatellite platform, which is something that, you know, we've gone through the pain of doing, and now I think we're getting good at it because we've made all the mistakes. So we enable that infrastructure to support other customers by either deploying new payloads, new technologies, and new sensors, or providing full end-to-end solutions, or also allowing customers to deploy software applications into our network, and leverage the existing constellation of well over 100 satellites in space. So we have that as a side offering that we call Spire Space Services.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Juan, can you hear us?
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thanks for this opportunity in participating in a roundtable. Satlantis is a company based in Bilbao and Florida, whose job is to provide the information that the light contains out of a footprint, spectral footprint of a certain phenomenon. So that is why we have a shareholder like Enagas, who is concerned about gas leakages in his infrastructure, and our role is to provide this measurement of methane emissions. We have currently 5 flight missions, either in the format of camera or full satellite, with ESA, NASA, and JAXA. The first one was with JAXA, second one will be next December with NASA. The third one is our own mission of a CubeSat satellite in the Venir 2-meter resolution. The fourth mission is a camera mission for the oil and gas sector. And the fifth mission is the satellite of methane. We combine those technologies into formats from very small in CubeSats to minisat to 50 centimeter, going through sub-meter resolution in microsats. So we manufacture cameras from scratch that can be adapted to particular physical phenomena, so that we have this capacity of really providing the final solution, because the camera is more or less the heart of the final solution. And we partner with a number of companies to provide these full solutions upstream. We combine a number of technologies to achieve this small miracle in optics, mechanics, and power electronics and image processing, providing agility, which means that not only through the orbit, but within a 600-kilometer bandwidth, we can select which targets, like a coastline, we want to see. And this is the result. So we have a panchromatic here image capture of San Diego or San Francisco, and you see the beauty of it for such a small camera. And if you do a zooming, you can see over there that we even arrive to 70 centimeter submetric resolution, where we can see the lines of the takeoff road, or we can even see the blades of the helicopters. And also in urban contexts, we can see cars, or we can see the traffic on a motorway. So in the end, this is the role: listen to the customer problem and try to partner with a number of companies and try to tune a sensor that is really meaningful for the particular problem. So we don't go from the generic to the specific. We do quite the contrary, from the specific to the general. Projects like this one, for example, that we have been awarded, that we are leading over Thales, Igeos, Telespazio, and other large companies, where we want to provide a 50 centimeter resolution for maritime solutions, is a good example. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So just to enter the domain, we're going to discuss about, very briefly, about how all our companies did succeed to bring something to the European domain. Maybe we could talk about the normalization of the space market nowadays and the space domain, basically, in terms of CapEx, teams, capabilities. I guess all our companies would not have been doable 20 years ago, but with the arrival of cube satellite systems or small satellite systems, we knew type to work in space with new flying models and flying systems in terms of IT and stuff like that. It totally brings and changes the paradigm. And for Unseen Labs, typically we are deploying constellation with a very small team. The first satellite was deployed in less than 1.5 years after the beginning of the project, and we are now deploying the constellation, and the team, we are below 30 people, which is totally unimaginable 15 years ago. I guess it can be the same for both your companies and for your 3 companies, sorry, Juan, I can see you. So maybe you can react on that and how it can bring you new kind of stuff to do.
Yeah, I can take a stab at it first. You know, ISI was exactly there with you. Like the whole constellation or the concept for the technology came out of a master's thesis of the 2 co-founders. And so they that was their first job, was just, you know, create this technology that everyone said it couldn't happen, and they did it and launched it. And I think just in terms of thinking about 2 college students launching this kind of system, like, you know, a decade ago, I can't even imagine it happening, right? So the barrier to entry is very low. You know, there's more funding opportunities. Of course, like, just because of the smallness of the tech, you know, the tech itself, you know, from an instrumentation perspective, it becomes just like very easy to break into this, for sure. Do you want to?
Yeah, I share exactly the same point. Our founders also started in a garage and putting together a satellite on their own. As you said, the barrier to entry is very low. Let's say the capex requirements are not that high, and the investors understand that it's no longer that space is expensive. It's more about, okay, now that space is not expensive, what are you going to do with what you're trying to do in space? You know, you're asking us for money as investors. What are you going to do with this technology? What are you going to do with the products that it can develop? And I think nanosatellite technology allows us to really open up the market, address multiple customers across multiple markets with very innovative solutions that can be really customized to what the customer really wants. So it becomes very market-driven or customer-driven. Because we can rapidly deploy new capabilities at relatively low cost. And at the same time, nanosatellites they're no longer little machines that are developed in a garage. They're high-powered computers. They're very sophisticated pieces of machinery that highly capable, and they're good for some things. They're not good for others. But they really, and because they have let's say a limited lifespan in space, you rapidly evolve the technology. You know, you go through many iterations of the technology. It's not an asset that remains in space kind of fixed for 15 years. It's something that needs to be renewed very frequently. So you take advantage of new developments in technology to deliver new capabilities at a cost point that is affordable.
Yes, exactly. Juan, do you have some?
Yes, thank you, Clement. On the one hand, I think we chose the wrong métier because we decided to do optics in space, and that is such a hard job. So we were just working for 8 years trying to get the first flight, and it was really hard. So it was not the same as my colleagues. We really suffered the garage phase and the tunnel for very long. But once you arrive into heaven, I think I really like your question about normalization of the sector. I think this is key. We have to understand that customers cannot put a capex of hundreds of millions waiting for 7 years for a project to be developed, expecting that their markets do not change and they can exploit them for another 10 years. So no one has a perspective of 15, 17 years. What's going to happen to the TV in the next 5 years, which is the main business of the big satellite communication companies? Who knows? I mean, what's going to happen to the platforms? Is it going to really spread around? And nobody knows. It's so hard. No, but with new space, I think we facilitate life to customers because say, okay, your problem is to detect methane. I can solve it for you. And space is something incredible because the world is very tiny, and I will do just a turn in 90 minutes to cover the planet in a few hours or a few days. And then I think as we make life easy, because projects are short, then we can understand customer requirements at the beginning, and we can solve their problems with a budget. And I think that's healthy for everyone.
Could I add something?
Yes, of course.
No, just to piggyback off of what I think both of you were saying as well, like there's this beautiful opportunity to just, through the normalization, through the cost effectiveness of new space, of being able to launch, new constellations relatively easily. But I think it also is a bit worrisome just in terms of, in order to find the right type of solution or the right customer, there is a disposability of the nature of this, where you run the risk of maybe creating too much of this technology and at the cost of trying to identify the solution. So there's a responsibility aspect, I think, of this normalization, of just making sure that we're not just launching for launch's sake, but we're also critically evaluating what is it that we're going to build with the data and make use of those pixels or signals of any kind of wavelength.
Yeah, clearly. And if I can maybe add something about normalization, is people now can work in space without being space specialists. With this kind of platform we are using, except of the payload, of course, or we are working with space specialists, it's my brother, pretty easy. But the other guys of the Synapse teams are coming from cybersecurity, IT, basically computer science specialists, and they have all the skills we need in the company to make them operate satellites, deliver products, and stuff like that. We just have to learn them a few stuff about space, what's an orbit, and how do you talk to satellites. That's not that complicated. But now the field is clearly open to new people, and they can bring new view and they bring new ideas, and we are no more stuck in the classical way of thinking of space. I can personally talk about that. I used to work in the French space domain, and meeting people with totally different background from IT or cybersecurity, as I said, bring us new ideas. So the normalization is not only on CapEx and platform and technology, but people too, and it's a part of the success of the system, I guess. Thanks to you people.
Yeah, and picking up on that, at Spire we tried to actually make it a habit not to hire people from the space domain. Okay, we do, but but it enriches the company to bring people from other domains. And you clearly, and as soon as you start talking to somebody, I come from the space domain, so maybe I'm a mistake in terms of what the hiring that Spire did, but when you talk to those people that come from other domains, they bring a richness of other perspectives, other markets, other types of customers, other relationships that really helps the company to address new markets in a new way. Absolutely.
Yeah, clearly. So we talk about normalization, a little bit of the change of paradigm of space capabilities. We have just a few minutes. Maybe we can discuss a little bit about what we can bring to the Europe, typically. All our companies are experts in one domain. The fusion of all these domains could bring typically brand new capabilities, and to succeed to fulfill maybe the lack of the capabilities in Europe. It won't have been doable once again a few years ago. Maybe you can explain how you think you can bring stuff and what you have in head for the future. If you have a few words about that, feel free, please. Maybe Juan, if you want to start.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, with full respect with my colleagues, because I think you are companies that have a great success in the US market, and maybe this US market is providing you the main strength of the company, no? Of course, we are thinking of that as anyone else. But I think as Europeans, we have to understand that our investment in space is only 20% of the US. And it varies from year to year, but it will move from 20 to 25 and so on. So I think we must be realistic in choosing the right goals to be global leaders. So I think it doesn't make sense to be regional leaders, to capture our own market, to provide the home services, but rather to have this perspective that the space market is very small and that we need this global competition, that we need to be successful in other markets, in Latin America, in Asia, in Africa, of course, in Europe. So, being realistic about that, it means we need to focus. We need to be specialists. We need to have some strong barriers in our competitive proposition, which may be related to technology in most cases. where we can really flourish and be leaders. That is my guess. I think sometimes we are followers with the argument of being also leaders at home, and that doesn't work. So I think I fully agree with the Mars missions and with other, but I think once we start talking about the big millions, we should understand what is our role and how the industry can be part of that. And I would more favor global niches that can be very, very relevant and every year appear new as quantum computing in space and many others, so that we are alert on these opportunities and we can be leaders in these global niches.
Yeah, on my side, I mean, Europe is, Europe is a leader in Earth observation or remote sensing. Europe has a unique capability with Copernicus. I think it's been a huge investment on the side of European institutions, European Union and European Space Agency, and it's developed a wonderful capability. I think nanosatellite technology can complement Copernicus. I mean, the missions that Copernicus sustains are mid to long term, collecting essential data with large spacecraft. I think nanosatellite technologies can complement because we have, again, we have climate change, which is evolving rapidly. We have many events as well that are changing around the world where SAR technology is there to capture the differences very quickly, day and night. So I'm a strong believer that that our companies can complement the capabilities of in Europe of Copernicus to really continue to enhance the strong capabilities of Europe in the domain of Earth observation and remote sensing. I think we're very complementary, and I think we should just add those forces together to really create new products, new services, things that change very quickly and that complement the long-term missions that are absolutely necessary to keep having that advantage.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Definitely, like I wanted to hash on that a little bit too. Like, you know, I think there's a great opportunity for this data assimilation aspect of, you know, we have the radar frequency or radio frequency, we have radar technology, we have the EO, IR optical technologies. And then, you know, they're each providing a lot of unique insights that could be complementary in terms of, you know, really understanding disaster management or natural catastrophe solution development or, you know, tracking dark vessels or whatever the case is. I think, you know, there's the data assimilation side, but then also like the tooling side, our responsibility around creating more available open source tooling and software that allows for collaboration. You know, one of the things I see now from an engineering perspective is there's a lot of compartmentalization. I mean, it's still a challenge, you know, even with Copernicus data to find the data that you need or to be able to exactly get what you want. And I think there's an opportunity to do better from a European perspective to just make it easier.
Yeah, clearly, just to clarify, Copernicus, I'm totally in love with this project. I'm pretty sure it's the best space project. To be, for people who are not aware about that, the continent financed a full constellation of different satellites and give for free the data. It's a huge asset for all the companies and created a lot of jobs, new ideas and stuff like that. And so clearly, yes, our capabilities can complement and can, as you said, Dan, we can act quick and we can fulfill a lack in a few months or a few years. But we will always need more, let's say, more classical satellites who are in space for 20 years and who are here to settle down the capabilities. So it's not us versus the classical space, but I guess it's all together. We can bring new way to do space, and for me, the opposition between new space and other space is quite nonsense, and we just should all work together to bring new capabilities. Just my mind, but.
Absolutely.
Let me comment on the Copernicus topic. That I think it's amazing to discover how it has changed the landscape of users. So you may go to a region and talk about agriculture and so on, and then you discover that they are experts in image processing and they are working for 3 years with Copernicus and they are waiting for the next generation. So they have created a huge demand that today is limited by So they are asking for the next generations of technology to enhance their functionalities. It's amazing. If we had to do it project by project on an individual basis, I think we would have been much lower. So I think we have to build on this speed that Copernicus has created. And now I think the question is, how can that benefit Europe? So Copernicus has been generous with the world, giving the images for free to everyone. And now I think the topic is how can European industry benefit from this fantastic initiative? And that is not that trivial.
Yes, exactly. You wanted to add something, Dan?
Yeah, just on that point, and I know our time is up because I can see the little screen as well. This was also pointed out by one of our previous panels. And we have some real tough existential issues on top of us, and climate change is one of them. But there's many others. But I think this also creates a challenge and an opportunity, of course. And I think Europe should lead the way in terms of being able to understand the world as it's changing, and Copernicus plus nanosatellite technology and all these and this rich ecosystem of companies in Europe that has been created to kind of make sense of the data, that can help us lead the way in that sense. And it will help Europe also define how humanity adapts to climate change. And I think this will come. This is something that we should take as an opportunity, because it's a global challenge where Europe has a role to play, and we can all help to fulfill that role.
Yes, wise words. Maybe a few words, Shay, if you want to close the discussion. No, it's okay. We end with the word of Dan. So thank you very much. It was brief but intense, and we are here to discuss if you need. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you very much for this great contribution. I will keep in my mind many messages you gave to us. For example, space needs talent and people from other domains. CHIPS is beautiful. Opportunities with Copernicus. So thank you very much. So the next roundtable will be for one person, a keynote. Miss Katia Stambolieva from Portugal. So Katia is CEO of Cosmos Speaks today. So Katia will explain to us who is Cosmos today and Cosmos Speaks. And your topic will be Earth observation to serve humanities.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Just a quick beginning. This is what I need to use to change. Perfect. Good afternoon. Welcome to the present, and welcome to our future. And if someone has forgotten to mention this to you, welcome to planet Earth as well. Today, we listened to a lot of different space topics. We listened about how we're going to build a moon station, how we're going to mine asteroids, how we need to make the European ecosystem more commercially friendly to space players. So we don't do only R&D, but we actually have good procurement contracts. And during the last session, we actually saw some impressive images of Earth from IC. And we also saw some analysis from Unseen Labs. Today, I'm not going to talk about any of those. Today's talk is going to be a triple treat. I'm going to tell you about the past, the present, and the future. And we'll start with the past. Before '69, there was the space race craze. This actually managed to help us put a human being in orbit. And after that, we managed to see the first steps of a human being on the surface of the moon. That was mesmerizing. But after that, there was almost no trace of the space race until recent years, until 10, 15 years ago. And what we have now is we put on Netflix and we watch series about space. We go to the cinema to watch movies about space. We read books, but the part of which that I love the most is that we go to space job fairs. So we actually finally have jobs in the space sector again. And while we're talking about the past, I'm also going to tell you the start of how I ended up being here. It was 2017, and I was at the British Interplanetary Society in London at an event there. But the AC was blowing very cold air, so I escaped to the corridor. The security guy started a conversation with me, and he had been working there for more than 20 years. And at some point, I started sharing my love to space with him, and he asked me a question that I couldn't give an answer to. I told him, I'm going to work in space after 10 years. And he asked me, why 10 years? Why not now? That day, I couldn't give him an answer. But a couple of months after that, I launched my first space tech venture. It was inspired by the wildfires that we had in Portugal. And what we did is we used satellite image analysis to help governments and businesses mitigate wildfires. Now that we are here talking about satellite images, we come to the present. And we're going to take a look at this. How many of you know what this is an image of? And show me with a raise of hands, please. Woo! No one knows. Okay, we have some people who have seen this photo. This is something that the people who died before 2020 never saw. So we are one of the first people who ever saw this photo. And this is actually a Martian sunset. So this is a photo that helps us see the invisible. We're not on Mars. Oops. We're not on Mars, but yet we can see how the Martian sunsets look like. And our capabilities of taking photos in space are so massive that we can also look further away. This is what researchers saw of Puteaux in '96, and this is what we see now. And I would love to imagine the tears of joy of the researchers who actually helped us build that image of Puteaux in '96 when they see the rich colors that we can see now. So if we can go to the edge of the solar system and take such amazing images, what is going to happen if we take that camera and point it down to Earth? And this is what we're going to discuss today. We're going to look at Earth from space, and we're going to see the invisible. And to do this, while we're still here in the present, I would like you to join me. I know that some of you don't want to be involved in the conversations while you're sitting in the audience, and that's totally okay. I'm not going to ask you to join. For the rest of you who feel a little bit adventurous, let's do the following. Can you tell me what you see here? I'm going to give you a bit of seconds. Juno. We have one guess, which is Juno. It is? It's gas. Another guess, which is gas. Do you guys want to join in, or are you ready for the answer? So, what we're looking at here is sea waters off the coast of Alaska, which are melting some ice underneath. And here, unfortunately, you barely can see this because of the chairs. Here we have some green plankton plantation. Let's do this again. What do you see now? Okay, we have one guess, which is Yellowstone, which is a pretty good guess. Thank you for that. Any other ideas? If you don't want to share, don't worry. No pressure. Okay, so we are looking at the river, and you see these beautiful yellow and orange colors. These are colors that come from a nearby mine. What this is a river that is poisoned with gold and copper. So mesmerizing, but very dangerous as well. And before we continue, I want to share a fact with you. Our human eyes we see 3 different types of radiation. We see red, we see green, and we see blue. But satellites, they can see more. Sometimes they can see up to 14 different types of radiation. So imagine, us human beings, we are walking as if we are blindfolded. But satellite images can help us see the invisible. And here is what we're going to do now. Our final quiz for today. What do you see? Yes, correct, thank you. This is a volcano eruption, and this is the thermal radiation. So what is colored on the image is actually heat, or what's very hot on Earth, and the rest is blacked out. And our human eyes cannot see this. We need satellites or some kinds of sensors to be able to perceive these type of images. So we spoke about the past, and we're talking about the present by looking at Earth and trying to guess what we can see. And now let's move to the future. Let's see the invisible, and let's see how satellite images can help us solve some of humanity's grand challenges. Let's see what we can do for climate change, for society, and for all of these small, intricate problems that we usually think they're too big for us, so we're not going to get involved. What we can do is we can see change. Here we can see how the Aral Sea is losing its waters. And if we were researchers, we could try to protect the ecosystem which is around the lake, and we can try to understand how we can prevent this from happening to other places around the world. What we can do is we can travel down south to Antarctica, and we can see the formation of new icebergs. You know, nowadays everyone is talking about climate change and how the ice shelves are melting, but we don't feel it, we don't see it. With satellite images, we can see it. And this is our new iceberg from the blurred ice shelf. Let's talk about something that is more recent. These are 2 photos of the Suez Canal this year, and I hope you remember the big ship Evergreen was stuck there. So there's a massive traffic jam from both the northern and southern parts of the Suez Canal. And what we can see here is what it was before and what it was during the traffic jam. But also, pay attention here, because we can see some ships there, but we cannot see them very well. What we usually do in these cases is we zoom in, so we get higher resolution images to see the invisible. Or we can do different other things. We can use the capabilities of satellites to show us the invisible, and keeping the same resolution with the traffic jam of the Suez Canal, we just look at height instead of color. So these are radar images with the same resolution of 70 meters that show us what is black is very low and what is white is higher. So now we can see how the ships popped out without even us zooming in and increasing the resolution. What we can do is we can proudly share with you that Japan has a new island since less than a month now, because there was an underwater volcano eruption 1,200 or so kilometers south of Tokyo. So the Japanese archipelago became bigger with one island as well. But I have only been speaking to you about environmental things and how we can see them from space. Let's concentrate on human beings now. This is a photo of a car park. This is the Syrian-Turkish border, and what we do, or rather, what we know through humanitarian organizations is that Syrian refugees would drive to the border, leave their car there, cross the border on foot towards their future, away from the war zone, and hopefully a better life. This is not something new. What is new is that we have a new wave of Afghani refugees. And maybe photos like this can help us count how many there are, where they're going, so we can plan how to help them better. We can also see coronavirus from space. And this was in the news with a lot of satellite images last year. This is just one example. We go to Yemen, And to the left, we have an image of a village and the cemetery around the village. And to the right, if you're able to see it, which I'm not quite sure because there is a lot of light coming here, we can see how the cemetery has enlarged. So what we can do is we can count the number of new graves so we understand how many lives have been lost to the pandemic. This is the pandemic as well, but in this case in Saudi Arabia. This is the Grand Mosque at Mecca, and this is prayer time. I think you can guess which photo is taken before the pandemic and which photo has been taken after the pandemic hit. We can also see what happens when there is a big storm. These are some power outages in a city in the States. And we can see this easily from satellites. So what I did today is I took you on a journey. We traveled in the solar system and we traveled around Earth, but we didn't do anything. Now imagine what we can do when we take action. How much is this going to cost us now? Almost nothing. And what could our gain of this be? Our gain is going to be our future. We can redesign our future, and we're going to do it. So, if you'd like to talk to me about Earth observation or anything remotely or not remotely related to this, find me in the breaks during this conference. Thank you very much, and I'm honored to have you as my audience today.
Thank you, Katia. So, the last but not least, a roundtable about GAFAM from big tech to space tech, opportunities and threats, with Gauthier Brunet, Chief of Staff, Loft Orbital, Frédéric Fillou, business writer and the editor of the Monday Note, and Judy Wallace, Chief Procurement Officer from OneWeb Satellite. I don't know where is Julie. Okay, Judy, welcome. Take a seat, and I think we have also online Muriel from France, Nice. Muriel Lafaille, Head of the Economic Intelligence Pole and Project Manager of the Observatory of Space Economy at CNES. Can you hear us?
Yes, it's a pleasure to be with you today.
Okay, welcome. So, Gauthier, maybe you will manage that roundtable, or? I will. Okay, you will. Okay.
They are the experts. I'm
okay.
The humble moderator.
Okay. So you have about 30 minutes?
Yeah.
So we have time.
So.
Huh?
Okay. We are running late, but that's okay. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for staying with us. I mean, we have the hard time to be in the session which stands between the rest. So let me start again. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for staying with us this afternoon. We have the hard time to be in the last session, which stands between the rest of the conference and the drinks, which is always difficult. So we're going to try to make the best of it. My name is Frédéric Fillou. I'm a technology writer. I'm covering new space, writing about platforms and other things. So the title of this session is GAFAM, which is the acronym in Europe for big tech. From big tech to space tech. Why did we choose this topic? I mean, nearly every week, every month, we have flurries of news about Amazon leveraging its cloud business to become a key service provider in the sector. In response, we see Microsoft doing a lot of deals with other on its own. Google wants to plug satellite streams directly into its data center and stuff. And of course, there is SpaceX, which is poised to become the sixth horseman of big tech, as some would suggest. At least it bears the DNA of the big tech. And just one number to frame the discussion. And again, I'm mixing a little bit apple and oranges here, but I think this is a very staggering number. The cash reserves of Amazon, Microsoft, and Google amounts to $340 billion right now, which is 37 times the amount of money which has been raised in 2020 in the news space sector. Again, I mean, this is just a number to illustrate what we are facing here. So what we want to discuss now is the impact of this significant move to the industry. Is it more a threat or is it more an opportunity? Is it a sign of maturity we have to deal with? What are the implications on the regulatory side of the business for the European Union or for the states themselves? And of course, what is the perception of the people involved in this business who are working on a day-to-day basis in this web building constellation, launch system and services? So to discuss this, we have Muriel Lafaye, who is online talking from Toulouse. She's the founder and the program manager of the Space Economy Observatory at CNES, the French space agency. She sits in many organizations that are critical to the defined space policy. Judy Wallace is the chief procurement officer of Airbus OneWeb Satellite. Her job, which seems very complicated and very challenging to me, is to organize the super complex supply chain of satellite. And I think you are churning out 15 satellites per week, is that correct?
Yep,
Yeah.
2 per day, yes.
Yeah, 2 per day, which is kind of an amazing. You're building like Ford is building car, which is kind of amazing. And we have Gauthier Brunet, who is Loft Orbital Chief of Staff. He leads the European business development activities with ESA and the European Commission. He joined Loft only 4 months ago. Before he was the COO of TrustMe. Before we go on, Gauthier, we are going to stick with you just a moment, because in this audience, many knows about OneWeb and many knows about CNES, of course, but I suspect, without being offensive at all, less people know about Loft Orbital. Could you walk us through, please?
Indeed, it's our brand is not quite as strong yet, but hopefully soon. But basically, in a nutshell, Loft Orbital provides space infrastructure as a service. And one thing that's unique about our approach is that we really come to space with the mindset and technologies of the cloud. And so to the greatest extent possible, what we're trying to do is allow our customers, who include startups, larger companies like Honeywell and Eutelsat, as well as space agencies. So we work with NASA, the UAE Space Agency, the Canadian Space Agency. So a very diverse set of clients. We allow them to truly focus on their core business, which is optimizing the use and operation of their payloads. And basically, we fully take care of the rest, just like a cloud provider gives you the service of doing what you want on the cloud, and you do not worry about where the server is or which connections were used to provide that service. So we really push this analogy to the extent possible. And one example of the opportunities, our VP of Engineering is the former VP of Engineering of Dockers. So for those of you familiar with containers and such technologies coming from tech, we are truly trying to bring those to the space agency, which is both a wonderful opportunity and, to be fully transparent, sometimes a challenge as well.
Okay, and to come to our subject, I mean, now you are facing these behemoths of the digital sector. I mean, the big four, big five. What's your feeling about it? Do you see that as a threat, as an opportunity? Do you intend to work with them? Do you believe that at some point there will be some kind of passage obligé, as we say in French, means that you will have to go through them because their service will be great at for less money? What's your general feeling about it?
All of the above, but what certainly is true is that there are significant positive impacts to the involvement of big tech in the space sector, whether it's on the talent, just the exposure, and obviously the investing environment. If companies like who have the type of financial positions and assets are looking into space, then it must mean that there's a lot of money to be made. And so for those of us that are raising funds or looking for talent and looking for visibility, it certainly does have some positive impacts as well.
You mentioned the funding. Do you think it's going to change the perception of the funding ecosystem like it did with the general tech, meaning that when you launch a startup today, people, your VC are going to look at either your possible exit or either, by the way, through the lens of Google or Facebook or Google or Amazon are going to do what you are doing in a matter of 6 months and are not going to give you money. My point being, it will have a huge impact. It had a huge impact on the tech industry in that sense. Do you see the same kind of thing happening with, for instance, companies being by design bound to be sold to one of the big four, big five?
So we haven't seen that a ton historically. I think so. There's the Google acquisition of Skybox in 2015, but other than that, in the space industry at least, I don't think I've seen too many of these exits. I think the main impact is, well, if these guys who have very significant balance sheets are investing massively to go after these markets, then they must think that a number of constellations and other space projects are going to come to fruition. And so whoever is in that supply chain one way or another, and to be honest, we're not directly competing with anything that any of these guys are trying to do. It's actually a positive sign. So, but it could go both ways, obviously.
Sure. If we take a very practical example, when it comes to ground station, for instance, from what I understand, you're relying on KSAT right now. And when I was doing some research for this conference and for other stories I wrote about it, I saw on Amazon AWS ground station, the name of their product, that they intend to reduce the cost of operating ground station or dealing with ground station by 80%. So we know that this kind of company is willing to spend as much money as it needs to take a market, to take over a market, and to be some kind of market power. What does it change? What does it change for you? Are you likely to switch to a service operated by AWS, for instance?
So I don't deal with procurement, but I do think that increased competition within our whole supply chain is a good thing for us, and probably Judy is a better person to answer that one. But for sure, because we outsource our ground segment provision, the more the merrier, and the more options we have, and the more competitive options we have, the more competitive we'll be able to be with our clients. So certainly a positive. I mean, if that's true, if we're able to decrease our cost structure, yeah, that's a good day for us.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment, I would say. We're going to turn to Muriel. She's online from Toulouse. Muriel, as the head of the Space Economy Observatory at CNES, you have a great vantage point on this. How do you see the role of these U.S. tech giants in the new space sector? Again, I mean, same question. Is it a matter of concern to you?
It is, of course. Well, I do think this is an opportunity for the sector because they already have plugged themselves to the data depository of Copernicus, as an example. So that means that this set of data add value. If not, they wouldn't do that. So I think it's an important sign for these big tech entities give to the space sector.
How does Europe should react on this? What could be the change, if any, of strategy in Europe, in the European space ecosystem, with the arrival of these big companies?
I think we should accelerate. We should accelerate to for the Europe to be independent and also to develop our own ecosystem. Well, our weakness today is not to have such GAFAM in Europe, but maybe this will be an opportunity.
Do you think, for instance, we should change the a system which is largely based on spreading subsidies and grants and stuff to some kind of more commercial-oriented approach with a system that could be more comparable to the procurement system there is in the United States with NOAA, NASA, and DARPA, for instance?
What we call new space, in fact, is a way to see that the space sector is now a real commercial industrial sector. And also we have to adapt our procurement to this new evolution. So already in the Copernicus procurement, you have the now data buy possibility with the contributing missions. We hope also that in the new programs, service procurement will increase also, because if we compare to what is done in the US, it's the demand pool that is leading the way. So it means that the federal agencies have been ordered to change their procurement issues, and we should also adapt ours.
In terms of leadership of the European space strategy, do you think that the current way that the whole system is run is has the right structure to migrate and to switch to this kind of procurement system you're referring to?
We are in this approach to make it evolve. As an example, at CNES, now our procurement is more on the service buy, and also we're still supporting R&D, but more and more, even for science issues, it's now more oriented on the service buy. So I think we are in this evolution, and also Europe seems to be in this evolution too. When talking about the connectivity constellation, I think also some procurement will be reorganized in order to for the, let's say, new space actors to bid to these new opportunities.
If you have to name a few measures or a few action to take in order to, I'm using your own word, to accelerate the whole process of developing a procurement system and stuff, what could it be? Give me 3 important measures that should be taken at the European level to speed up this process.
Well, to orientate the procurement on the service buy approach. First, I think it will be one of the main measures, because if we organize this demand pool, then new investors will be interested in supporting the new companies, what would be the providers for the new services. This is a very important issue. Maybe second things will be to accelerate the development of certain R&Ds, because if we want the services to the right performance with at the right cost, we have to orientate all our development with this cost by design issues, and this is something quite new. And maybe third point could be also to open the procurement to these new actors, and not to be shy.
You think that we are hearing some complaints about this, the fact that the move you're mentioning is not going fast enough. Do you think these complaints are a little bit unfair, or you think it's just a matter of time before we catch up?
I think as an issue with the time to market, and we have to accelerate our process. We already have, and well, let's say unfortunately the COVID crisis has helped in accelerating them. But I think there is an issue with to be much more reactive than we are, because this issue of the time to market is really designing and will be really a key issue for the actor to take the lead and to take the part of in the market. So we really have to reinvent our procedures, our procurement, and maybe to be more flexible on the accompanying with the demand of these new companies.
Okay, thank you very much. Judy, I'm turning to you. You have you're on the both side of the Atlantic, which makes your life kind of complicated. You must be sleep deprived. You don't look like sleep deprived, but you must be by your work. When it comes to coming back to the core of the subject of this session, about the GAFAM, about the big tech, what seems to you the most vulnerable elements in Europe we should be concerned of when it comes to the arrival of the big tech?
Well, first thing I would say is Airbus OneWeb satellites exist today, so it actually proves that Europe can make 2 satellites per day. So maybe just a bit of history of where we came from. The joint venture of Airbus OneWeb satellites was created in 2016. So joint venture between OneWeb, the operator, and Airbus Defence and Space. Maybe a bit closer. So we have, big European backing. We have the experience in mass production through Airbus Group, obviously through the aircraft, the commercial aircraft and the helicopter side. And we also have the satellite design and qualification know-how. So I actually represent the supply chain of this venture today. And it is an industrial model that is 100% reliant on supply chain, i.e. we ship in goods to Florida. That's where the final assembly lines are. And that supply chain is actually based 50% in Europe and 50% in the US and Canada. So it means that we have approximately 20 suppliers today within Europe that are producing equipment to those rates. So going back to Muriel's comments in terms of speed to market, it's extremely true that speed to market and having OneWeb as a customer today is proving that, because we are under immense pressure to build these 36, 40 satellites per month. So that is pushing us to a certain level of performance that the satellite industry has never been pushed to before. So having the likes of SpaceX and, who's already ahead of OneWeb satellites, and Amazon, who's breathing down our necks, is actually an opportunity. There's a lot of emulation there, and it's pushing us as well to remain ahead of that space race.
But isn't it applying some pressure to you, for instance, when it comes to the job market? I mean, these companies are known to pay big ticket for talent. We know that we are in a market, you are in a business which is a little bit tense in terms of talent, I would say. How do you intend to deal with that? I mean, is it, again, a matter of concern to you, or how do you intend to retain your talent, so to speak, your workers, your engineers and stuff?
My answer is going to be multifold. I will say one thing to begin with is we are 1/3 of the personnel are actually based in Toulouse and 2/3 in Florida. So the I would say political and strategic decision that was made at the beginning of the program was to keep our engineering services, our design to manufacturing, so manufacturing engineering and quality in Toulouse, because we see that as a distinct advantage in terms of having access to high levels of expertise, and also the French engineering schools. It's also a question of salaries in terms of keeping our costs down, because we see it across the market. If we were to set up a similar engineering service in the US,
your costs would skyrocket.
Our costs would skyrocket. So our AI&T, everything that's actually built in Florida, we like to say that the brawn is in the US, but the brains are within Europe. So that actually gives sustainability. It's also, I would say, protecting European know-how, because the brains are clearly kept here. Another thing that we do is the European culture that's spread within our US facility is an advantage, because we look after our employees very differently from a GAFAM, for example, company would do. So, 4 weeks paid time off in the US is huge. Health benefits, well-being within the workplace, etc. It's a very different working culture. And we actually find in terms of retainment, it does make a difference.
For instance, does it rely to the, does it impact the loyalty of the workers? In Europe, they are known to be kind of more loyal to the employers than they are in the US, in which they will be much more prone to switch from one company to another. Is it an important factor as well?
It is an important factor. Our company, through OneWeb's Chapter 11, last year was obviously clearly stress tested. OneWeb was under that protection for 6 months. So potentially we could have lost a lot of people through that, but we actually saw, and it was in terms of the actual mission itself, it's in terms of how the company treats people, that we actually saw a high level of loyalty. So we did have to furlough some staff in the US, but those that we did not furlough stayed with us until OneWeb came out of Chapter 11.
Gauthier, Loft Orbital is going to face some issue in that regard with a company which is headquarters in San Francisco. It's an American company. You set up an office in Toulouse, and you are about to, I'm not betraying any secret, you are going to raise a Series B, which might be subscribed in the United States. How will you maintain a proper center of gravity for your company between the United States and France?
So Toulouse is by far our fastest growing office. It's where a lot of both the ground and flight software R&D is being done. And we've also opened a control center there. A lot of things that Judy pointed out also apply to Loft. There are incredible benefits to having. So we have a little bit more than a third of the more than 25 people in Toulouse now, and
you have 70 people together, I think.
Yes,
am I right?
Correct. And we do think moving forward, there should recruiting is going to continue to focus on Toulouse, partly for this cost and this balance that we're trying to find. And another benefit of Europe is truly the conditions that were right for Loft Orbital to invest quite massively for the past year and a half, and I think it's like having the best of both worlds. We actually have a third office in Colorado, but having feet on both sides of the Atlantic allows us to take advantage of the strength of each region. And on an operational side, as you know, so we have 2 satellites in orbit currently, and being able to have control centers that are 9 hours apart is actually a huge asset for us as well.
When it comes to the suppliers of your platform, you're relying on BCT, which is based in Colorado, and Leo Stella, which is based in Oregon, if I'm not, in Washington State. What seems to be the future? Are you open to switch to a European supplier or something?
So absolutely. So the payload hub, which is the technology that enables us to make any payload compatible with any bus, is indeed designed to be able to work with any bus provider. And we actually have had significant commercial traction for payloads that are too big for our current buses. So we're in discussions with several bus providers, especially in Europe. And
cool.
And part of my role is to develop this business in Europe as well.
Judy, I'd like to come back to you and your day-to-day operation. When it comes to the supplier, the ecosystem of suppliers, to which extent your approach is different than the GAFAM, the US big tech, when it comes to dealing with suppliers? Do you have some kind of different policy or strategy with suppliers compared to them? Could you elaborate on this?
Yeah, what we actually know about Starlinks, for example, is it's an extremely verticalized model. They're also using, part of the foundries, for example, that they use on the automotive, on the Tesla side. So they have decided to have something that is under their control in terms of verticalization. So it's extremely difficult today to become, I would say, a tier 1 supplier for the Starlinks constellation. So the decision that was made at the beginning of the OneWeb program is we would do something completely different. So it's based on collaboration. It's based on international cooperation as well. So as I said earlier, we are dependent on an international supply chain today. It has its challenges. I'm not saying it's a perfect industrial model, but it also means that in terms of sharing the market, bringing in innovation, the sustainability of the system as well, it does give us greater breadth. And it also means that in terms of the original financing of the project, a lot of our suppliers were actually financed through Export Development Canada, through the BPI in France, etc. So it's also one that's based on, I would say, public money coming into the program earlier on and bringing investment into smaller companies rather than concentrating it with the hands of a few.
Aren't you leaving on in terms of speed of execution? Because one of the factors when it comes, the common ground between Tesla and SpaceX is the verticalization allows them to be very, very fast in terms of development. Isn't it a slight hindrance, impediment when it comes to your business compared with them?
We've obviously spent a lot of time in terms of bringing our supply chain up to speed. I mean, we're talking about 35 different companies that are working on this program today as tier 1 equipment, tier 1 suppliers. So it has meant that we've deployed a lot of energy, a lot of effort around the globe. Today, our supply chain, I'd say, is made up of 3 very different groups. So we actually brought up to speed a third of them, which were R&D labs or even people working out of garages. We've got a couple of success stories in Spain, a couple of success stories in Germany as well. So we've brought them up to space standards and mass production. We're also working with, I would call them traditional space companies, but who'd never necessarily mass produced in the past. And the third category, and I think it's probably one of the best categories in terms of emulation, is companies that weren't in the space industry at all, that were already mass producing in the automotive industry, in electronics for missiles, in the aeronautics industry, and wanted to diversify. And somebody mentioned it on an earlier panel, that has brought a lot of wealth and an exchange of ideas. And I actually think that it has pushed us as a company today to challenge the status quo, the traditional space status quo, and it's actually helped us to gain speed, to actually see how it's done in other industries.
Gauthier, about the supply chain, what's your view? How do you deal with that at Loft? Do you have it hard to maintain some kind of fairly active ecosystem of suppliers, or do you?
I mean, we leverage, both in the U.S. and in Europe, what is available. You're asking the impact on the GAFAM on the supply chain, for example?
Yeah, among other things, yeah.
Well, so you brought up an example where, AWS could, theoretically become part of our supply chain, and if the claim you mentioned is true,
it's not me. It's on AWS, so I don't endorse them. I suspect that 80% of a discount for ground service station sounds a lot to me. But
well, it sounds great, and I
but
think
even though if it is 40%, that's something non-negligible, I guess, in terms of competition.
Right. So in some cases, definitely a positive impact in terms of the number and the competitiveness of the options we have, I guess, but it is, I think, more broadly, helping a lot of new companies, raise capital and bring new products to market, and that's always a plus for us as well, to be able to, keep pushing, increasing the capabilities of what we offer to our final customers.
Just a final question to both of you. As I asked to Muriel earlier, in terms of European leadership, European policies when it comes to developing, maintaining an healthy and vibrant ecosystem, what could be the best, what could be your wishes, what could be the best structure? I keep bumping into people. I'm not going to name anyone, who say to me, well, when we came up with this novel technology and stuff, we were really literally put away by the whole establishment of the space in Europe and stuff. It seems to evolve, to be fair, it seems to evolve in the right direction right now. How far are we to have some kind of optimal system in that regard, to foster innovation, to maintain a great and vibrant and healthy European ecosystem in space? What should we do? Judy.
I don't say that I've got a baked answer to that question. Once again, I think we should look at what Europe has already done today. We do not have that much contact with national space agencies or European space agencies. So building those bridges between the private sector and what's actually already been achieved, and actually creating some kind of working group around that would definitely be, a good way forward.
I definitely the trend seems to be good. I've had
everybody say
friends, so I've heard a lot of similar.
We come from very far away.
Yeah, so I heard similar stories, let's say a few years ago. But Loft Orbital, for example, is benefiting from very strong support from CNES, whether it's in the frame of the Plan de Relance or otherwise, and I think there's much more alignment between what. Agency, CNES in particular, in our case, but agencies in general, are trying to do, and the interest of the development of the new space ecosystem. So, whether it's perfect, I don't know, but it's definitely going the right way.
Okay, well, are there some questions? Do you have time for one or two questions in the room, or maybe one question if someone is willing to, unless you really want to go to the drink, which will completely understand. Sorry, you want to go to the drink, aren't you? Okay. Okay. Oh, well, I will thank you for the panelists. Muriel, thank you very much for talking to us as well. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Gauthier. And have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now we know well Loft Orbital. Thank you, Gauthier. Thank you, CNES. And do not forget that OneWeb we will be launched this evening at 20, about around 8 p.m. on the Soyuz launcher. So good luck. Huh? Good, very good. So it is the end of that day. It's time to turn off the light. I was very happy to be your master of ceremony for this afternoon. I am not used to do it, but I was happy to do it. So enjoy the end of that day, and I wish a good luck for your project, and I hope to see you next year. Thank you.